the unseen rivalry that shaped a generation. It began without a headline, without a scandal, without even a whisper loud enough to reach the wider world. Two companies, each building quietly in their own corner of the industry, chasing different visions that would one day collide with seismic force. Their rivalry wasn't declared. It simply grew, slowly, silently, like a pressure building beneath the surface. Every generation inherits a defining business conflict. Sometimes it's fought in boardrooms, sometimes on shelves, and sometimes, as in this case, it unfolds in the shadows, shaped not by ego, but by the quiet determination of two teams convinced they had the clearer path to the future. At first, their work seemed unrelated, but the world was changing, and the destinies of these two companies were already on course to intersect in ways no one could see. To understand how this invisible rivalry began, we must return to a moment where innovation felt predictable. The industry was guided by a handful of dominant players, each reinforcing the same assumptions year after year. Customers accepted limitations because no one offered anything different. Progress moved slowly, settled comfortably into routines that left little room for challenge. But beneath that predictability, a shift was forming. One company, tired of constraints, began experimenting with a new approach. Something agile, something user-driven, something that broke quietly from tradition. Their ideas were small at first, barely noticed. But small ideas, when nurtured with conviction, have a way of finding their shape. Across the landscape, another company sensed the same tension. They saw cracks forming in the market, pressure building behind consumer expectations, and a growing desire for tools that felt designed for the present, not inherited from the past. Their solution took a different form, born from different philosophies, but aimed at the same emerging need. Neither company saw the other as a threat. Not yet. They were simply building, exploring, searching for alignment with a world that was evolving faster than the leaders at the top could comprehend. This is where the reveal begins, because hidden inside their separate journeys was a convergence waiting to happen. Two visions approaching the same destination from opposite directions. And long before the world ever placed them side by side, the quiet steps they took in these early days were already shaping the rivalry that would define an entire generation of innovation. What appeared invisible then was already rewriting the future. The two companies advanced on parallel tracks, unaware that each step brought them closer to collision. Their early progress unfolded quietly, marked not by dramatic breakthroughs, but by subtle refinements, the kind that reshape entire industries one unnoticed improvement at a time. As their products matured, the reveal deepened. Customers began drifting toward experiences that felt more intuitive, more flexible, more aligned with the changing rhythm of daily life. One company captured attention with elegance and simplicity. The other earned loyalty through power and customization. Neither realized they were solving the same growing frustration from opposite angles. Analysts still ignored them. The giants still dominated. But small signals began appearing in the data, signals the old guard failed to interpret. Tiny jumps in user adoption, spikes in engagement across niche communities, unusual patterns in retention curves. These weren't accidents. They were early tremors in a landscape preparing to shift. As both companies grew, pressure surfaced inside their walls. Teams wrestled with scaling challenges, tightening deadlines, and the mounting expectations of early believers. Engineers rebuilt features in frantic sprints. Designers sharpened interfaces that once felt adequate, but now carried the weight of rising demand. Support channels illuminated new needs faster than product teams could react. And still, neither side saw the other clearly. Each believed they were alone in the pursuit of a better future. Each believed they had identified a gap the industry had overlooked. Yet their visions were converging with almost mathematical precision, shaped by the same unmet expectations customers were quietly expressing across the world. Conflict emerged, not between them, but within them. Leadership questioned how far to push innovation without destabilizing their growing audiences. Investors demanded clarity in markets that were shifting too quickly for long-term certainty. Teams feared moving too slowly and feared moving too fast. And beneath it all, a shared tension pulsed through both companies. The sense that something larger was forming just beyond their field of view. The world outside evolved faster. Competitors noticed the momentum and released rushed imitations. The giants, sensing a faint disturbance, made half-hearted adjustments that only highlighted how unprepared they were. Customers flocked toward whichever product responded fastest to their needs, unaware that in doing so, they were fueling the rise of a rivalry still hidden from public view. Then came the moment that changed everything. A feature launched by one company triggered an unexpected shift in user behavior. Rapid, measurable, undeniable. It solved a pain point so effectively that it captured attention across communities overnight. Adoption spiked. Conversations ignited. And on the other side of the industry, the second company noticed the change immediately. For the first time, they saw the shape of the competitor rising toward them. The invisible rivalry was no longer invisible, and what happened next would turn two quiet journeys into a collision that would transform the entire landscape of innovation. The moment they recognized each other as contenders, the tension inside both companies shifted from quiet urgency to an unmistakable sense of collision. What had once felt like internal pressure now carried the weight of an approaching storm. Both sides understood, almost instantly, that the next chapter of their journey would no longer unfold in isolation. They were no longer building for a market asleep at the wheel. They were building in direct response to a rival rising at equal speed. The conflict ignited quickly. The company that sparked the sudden user migration felt the first wave of intensity. Their breakthrough feature, intended merely to refine the experience for their current audience, had unexpectedly drawn global attention. Praise flooded in. Metrics surged. But with that surge came chaos. Servers strained. Customer support overflowed. Internal workflows crumbled under the pressure of scale they hadn't planned for. What looked like triumph from the outside felt like a firestorm on the inside. Across the industry, the second company watched the spike with sharpened focus. Their data dashboards lit up with warning signs. Feature overlap, shared user intent, behavioral shifts mirroring their own roadmap. The competitor wasn't just adjacent, they were aligned, step for step, idea for idea. And that alignment meant one undeniable truth. Only one of them could define the emerging standard. Pressure erupted inside their headquarters. Teams rushed to accelerate their timelines. Engineers tore apart old assumptions, rebuilding features that suddenly felt outdated. Designers reimagined flows that had once felt solid. Strategy meetings turned tense as leaders pushed for speed without sacrificing stability. Every delay felt like surrender. Every misstep felt like a gift to the rising rival. The emotional weight intensified when both companies independently hit the same barrier. Their systems, brilliant in concept but stretched thin by growth, revealed deep structural weaknesses. Legacy code clashed with new features. Old workflows buckled under modern demands. And both sides found themselves fighting the same enemy, the fragile architecture built during years when their ambitions were smaller. It was here, in the shared struggle, that the rivalry grew sharper. Each update from one company triggered a rapid counter-response from the other. When one improved performance, the other introduced a new integration. When one streamlined onboarding, the other launched a feature that redefined convenience. Customers noticed the rising pace. Analysts noticed the emerging pattern. And slowly, the industry began to understand that a new battle was unfolding, one that would pull the entire landscape into a race for dominance. But beneath the competitive fire, a deeper conflict brewed inside each team. Innovation now moved faster than their foundations could support. Cracks appeared, systems slowed, tests exposed fragilities neither side wanted to admit. And as pressure mounted, both companies faced the same terrifying possibility. The next major surge in users could break them before they had the chance to outpace the other. The emotional peak arrived during a late-night stress run, when one company watched its entire system collapse under a load far below what analysts predicted the rival could generate. The collapse wasn't public, but it was devastating. It revealed a flaw so embedded in their architecture that fixing it required tearing apart the very framework holding their product together. And on the other side of the rivalry, the second company discovered a similar weakness. Different in form, identical in consequence. Both contenders now stood on the edge of the same truth. The rivalry that would shape a generation could not be won by speed alone. It would be won by whoever had the courage to rebuild their foundation in the middle of the storm. And the next move would determine everything. Both companies stepped into the reconstruction phase with the same realization. The rivalry that had pulled them into the global spotlight was now challenging the very structures that held them together. And if they wanted to define the future rather than collapse under its weight, they needed to rebuild the foundations their success had outgrown. The first company began its overhaul in silence. Engineers isolated the flaw, an outdated subsystem buried deep within their architecture, and mapped out the web of dependencies that had been slowing them for years. They tore out components once considered untouchable, replacing brittle logic with systems built for speed, resilience, and global scale. The work was painstaking, but with every improvement, the product felt less like a legacy tool and more like a platform ready for the modern world. Across the industry, their rival underwent an equally intense transformation. Their flaw stemmed from a different source, a fractured workflow that created hidden delays during high-volume activity. Designers, engineers, and analysts came together in war room sessions, rewriting core processes from the ground up. They streamlined communication layers, redesigned data pathways, and rebuilt the foundation that had once served them but now threatened to limit their rise. And in both buildings, an unfamiliar clarity settled in. This rivalry wasn't about beating each other. It was about earning the right to exist in a future defined by user expectations, not legacy comfort. When the upgrades finished, the results were stunning. The first company launched its rebuilt system with quiet confidence. Response times dropped, capacity soared, new features deployed in hours instead of weeks. Users praised the transformation. Industry analysts noted a sudden leap in capability so sharp it reset competitive expectations overnight. Not long after, the second company unveiled its own evolution. Their product felt smoother, faster, more adaptive than ever before. Workflows that once felt heavy now moved with elegant efficiency. Their user base surged, fueled by the renewed trust born from stability and precision. For the first time, both contenders stood on foundations strong enough to support the visions they had been racing toward. This was the climax, the moment the unseen rivalry became undeniable. An entire generation of innovation was shaped not by victory or defeat, but by the mutual pressure that demanded each side become something greater than they would have been alone. And in the resolution, a deeper truth emerged. The rivalry had never been about dominance. It had been about acceleration, about evolution, about two companies pushing each other beyond the limits of comfort and into the realm of transformative progress. The industry, once stagnant, now pulsed with new energy. Customers benefited, developers thrived, and the boundaries of what was possible expanded like never before. Because sometimes the forces that shape a generation don't fight in public. They push each other in the shadows, quietly rewriting the rules of the world.